What's up, War Report family? We are back with another great edition of the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. Joining me is a very special guest, first time with me on the show. Spencer Mclaughlin joins me. He covers all things now ACC. It used to be the Pac, but now ACC. Let me bring Spencer in here. Spencer, thanks for joining me, man, to talk a little Cal versus Auburn.
Oh, yeah. I mean, last year it might have been my favorite college football game of the season to talk about in retrospect, knowing what I knew after the game. But yeah, great to be back on with you. And I think this will be a much more fun game for Auburn fans to watch than the win. It was a win last year.
It was. But
it wasn't pretty.
A win that felt like a loss. Yeah,
a little bit.
Felt like a loss. You had an epic segment last year with our friend Zach Blackerby over at Locked On Auburn. Still probably one of my favorite media pieces of the year. But Spencer, let's jump right in here. You mentioned the win last year. Auburn went out to the West Coast and played Cal in their house. Got out of there with a 14-10 win. But this year projects to look a little different. Now, some changes have been made at Cal. I want to start on offense. They've got a new offensive coordinator there. And they have a quarterback. Well, they had a quarterback that now plays wide receiver at Auburn. What kind of Cal offense is Auburn facing this go-round?
Yeah, I think it's one pretty similar to last year. You told me before we hit record that the Auburn coaching staff is expecting a different team. I don't share that particular opinion. I watched the Cal UC Davis game, or most of it anyway, and it wasn't very different than what Cal was a year ago. And, playing down to their level of competition or playing up to their level of competition, that's been a staple of the Justin Wilcox era since he's been there. And he's been there for a very long time now. And, they played both quarterbacks. I'm sure both will play again this Saturday. I'm never a fan of that. I think they should just roll with Fernando Mendoza. He showed what he's capable of a season ago. But, under offensive coordinator Mike Bloch, you're going to see a lot of RPOs. That it is not an incredibly vertical passing game. They're not stretching the field. It's a lot of RPO concepts. And, some of that is because they want to have every opportunity they can to get the ball to Jaden Ott, who's the best playmaker on this Cal offense. And there are a couple solid receivers who I thought looked good. And Isaiah Hunter, the redshirt freshman, I thought had a really, really nice game against UC Davis last week. But I think for this Cal team, the RPO game is critical, and they've got to be able to run the football. They struggle doing so against the Aggies. That's UC Davis's mascot, and that is an FCS team. It's a good one. It is a good FCS team, but it was not an encouraging sign to see the Golden Bears really struggle to find their footing on the ground against that level of competition.
Now, you mentioned they played two quarterbacks. Neither pushed the ball down the field very much. So it's a short passing game. You think that Auburn's defense has to be ready for? I mean, Mendoza was one of two passing beyond 20 yards. And Chandler Rogers didn't throw a single pass beyond 20 yards last week. And I feel like they're going to have to try to push the ball down the field, no?
Yeah, I think you have to create a couple of explosives. I don't know for Cal to pull the upset if they have to suddenly become Washington of last year or LSU of years past or any of these dynamic, explosive downfield passing attacks that we've seen in college football, because that's not what their identity is. It just has to be a little bit of a threat, because I think what you saw with UC Davis in the first half last week, Cal's defense really turned that game around with a couple of interceptions that altered the field position and gave Cal shorter fields to work with. They didn't do a great job in that game of sustaining drives. And when you don't have a lot of explosive chunk plays, it is hard to sustain drives because your execution has to be so good. You have to make the right reads on almost every single RPO you're coming with down the field. If that's going to be, an 8, 10, 12 play drive, it's hard. And so if Cal can get a little bit more vertical, I think that would be really beneficial to them offensively and make it a little bit easier. And I think if you're Auburn, you creep your safeties up. You load the box. You take away Jaden Ott and say, hey, Fernando Mendoza, if you can push the ball down the field to the redshirt freshman Isaiah Hunter or Maven Anderson, who I think they're a nice wide receiver tandem. I really do. I think those guys are incredibly capable. You have Mikey Matthews, the former Utah wideout as well. Their core is capable. I just haven't seen them yet prove they can consistently create those explosive plays. So if I'm Auburn, I creep the safeties down. I defend heavy against the RPO, put an extra safety in the box, force them to push it downfield. And if they can't, then you make some adjustments. But that's what I would be doing if I'm Auburn's coaching staff.
Yeah, look, you mentioned Jaden Ott being the best player on offense there. Now, he's a guy that's not going to fly under the radar coming into this one. He had some comments last year about the name on the jersey and what it meant to him. And he got knocked out of this one last year. Now, he didn't have a terrible game. I think he scored a couple touchdowns before he got knocked out of the game. But after Ott, what is there, right? Who steps up if they take Ott out of the game for Cal?
Yeah, well, Ott actually got banged up against UC Davis. He's listed as probable going into this game against Auburn. If he is not able to go or if he is limited, that is a huge hindrance. When you look at this Cal team over the last couple of years, their offensive output tends to go as Jaden Ott goes. When he was over 100 scrimmage yards last year, Cal's offense usually thrived. When he was under 100 scrimmage yards, they really tended to struggle because it's not just the production he gives you, it's the threat he poses and the attention that he draws on the offensive side of the ball. If you have to look at where number one is, when he motions out of the backfield, you're going to get a lot more attention on him if he's been in a really good rhythm, if he's creating explosive plays, making guys miss, and that can open the field up for some of the other weapons. But, on the edge, the two wide receivers I mentioned that certainly appeared to be the go-to guys for this Cal team. Obviously, it's just one game, and you never know who else can emerge. But they had some injuries in their receiving core, and Isaiah Hunter, former four-star recruit, redshirt freshman, and Maven Anderson, who's been with the Bears the last couple of years. They're good wide receivers. I mean, you could put them on a lot of different rosters, and they would be productive players. I don't know if either guy can go in against this Auburn secondary and, have 8 catches for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. But certainly if you look up and either one of those guys has, had 6 or 7 catches for 70 to 80 yards and a score, that's not going to surprise me. So I wonder, where Fernando Mendoza's looking, what the chemistry is like with, kind of the late wrinkle in the receiving core availability with the injuries. But I think for the offensive line, they've got to be better opening up running lanes. I mean, They were getting pushed around by UC Davis way too much. Way too much. And their offensive coordinator is an offensive line guy, so certainly he's going to want to see that unit really have a lot more success. But if they don't, it could be a really long day for the Bears.
Now, you mentioned that Ott could be out. He's listed as probable. Now, and I know the SEC is mandating injury reports here for the rest of the season.
That's good for people like us, I tell you. Right, it's a lot more helpful.
But if you miss that Ott is going to be out, there's a way that you can keep up with that. And that segment is brought to you in part by the Autograph app. Spencer, go to your phone's app store and download Autograph today. Autograph is your one-stop shop for all your team's news and podcasts. Anything that you're looking for on your team, Autograph has you covered. Why go to 6 different websites to get your team's news when you can just open the Autograph app and they aggregate all the articles and podcasts, all the news on your team that you're ever going to need right there on one spot. Every article read, every podcast listened earns you points of fandom, and you can use those points for rewards, which includes discounts on tickets to games. You can buy tickets through the Autograph app. They don't have all the fees of Ticketmaster and Vivid Seats. It's a great program. This costs you nothing. So when you sign up, use referral code RAPPORT when you sign up and let them know that the War Report sent you. But if you follow Cal and you're looking at this, you can download Autograph and all your Cal content will be right there. We appreciate them for sponsoring the War Report. Spencer, let's get into the offense. This certainly will be a different Auburn offense that they're facing. Now, Auburn has a heralded wide receiver class that was on display in week 1 versus their FCS opponent, which was Alabama A&M. Their top 3 receivers were all freshmen. They all scored touchdowns. It was wild. It was a wild time on the Plains last week. They dropped a 70 piece on Alabama A&M. Now, Hugh Freeze mentioned during his press conference on Monday that he still feels like Cal's approach to this defensively is going to be to load up the box, try to stop the run, and make Peyton Thorne beat them with his arm. They seem prepared to do that this year. What do you think about the challenge that Auburn's offense poses the Cal defense?
I think that's the right approach to take if I were going against Auburn, who I predicted to go 8-4 this year over on Locked On College Football, and I do think they're going to win this game. The one question that I have about them is how much can Peyton Thorne grow? How much of a running game can he get from Jarquez Hunter and the offensive line that the Tigers roll out? Like it's not he is not someone who you can say, hey, we need you to throw the ball 40 times and go for 350 yards. He's just not that guy. I'm sure Auburn fans are well aware of that by now. Like that's not how he is. He needs to be a complementary piece. He needs to be, a little bit more of that game manager role, which he's capable of serving. But this is a Cal secondary that had a very good week one. Now the defense, I'll get to that in just a moment. Didn't have a great first half, but then they were much better in second. But the secondary had 3 interceptions. They did a good job of making it hard for UC Davis eventually to move the football and score. They held them scoreless in the second half. One thing I want to watch for in this game, Mike, is the missed tackles. There were more than a handful in the first half that led to UC Davis moving the ball down the field. And they actually had the lead on Cal late in the second quarter. And then Cal had a kickoff return for a touchdown, and then they blanked them in the second half. Ultimately won the game 31-13, but they were trailing 13-7 at one point late in the first half. And that was because the offense was not having a lot of success. And also, the defense gave up a couple of drives. And Miles Hastings, the quarterback for UC Davis, was having some success throwing the football. But I think the secondary kind of got their feet under him and played much, much better as it went on. And certainly you have a much bigger test when you're looking at UC Davis receivers and Auburn's receiving core. That's going to be a big jump in competition for Cal. But if they play the way they did in the second half, that's going to lend itself to Cal being able to have more success in the football game. I just don't know what sort of performance, because like I said, with this Justin Wilcox Cal program, they have played up to their level of competition and they have played down to their level of competition. They have twice in the Justin Wilcox era been the only win of the season for a team they played. They were the only win that 2022 Colorado had. Wow. They were the only win that Arizona in 2021 had. Arizona had lost 20 games in a row as a program. Their first win was against Cal. So you see that level, but then Auburn fans also saw last year. They can play up to a level that you wouldn't think they are at on paper. And they've pushed Oregon before. They've beaten Ole Miss back in 2018, I think it was. They went into Oxford and walked away winners in a thrilling football game. So that's why this is an interesting matchup. I lean towards Auburn, but the question really becomes, what version of Cal comes out on the field and plays quarters 1 through 4?
Well, it better be the version that can deal with humidity, because it's going to be hot on Saturday. I can tell you that. This is a different Auburn team offensively. Hugh Freeze felt like they had to kind of contain what they were trying to do because he had no faith in the pass catchers on the outside. They leaned on the run game. Jarquez Hunter missed game 1 of last season, and it showed going into that Cal game. He looked rusty. He looked like he didn't have his legs. That's not going to be the case this year. I think he actually scored on his first play. His first touch, he scored a 37-yard touchdown. They didn't show anything in the run game. So as much hype as the pass game guy, Auburn didn't show anything in the run, and Hugh Freeze's teams lean run heavy when they're the most successful. So there'll be a lot of talk about the pass game, but I'm interested to see how that Cal defense will defend the run. Spencer, let's close out here. You mentioned that you picked Auburn to win this. You even mentioned that you picked them to go 8-4. But I got to get you on the record, brother. What score do you have? I have Auburn 45, Cal 7. What say you, sir?
Whoa. 45-7.
That's how different I feel this offense is, yes.
Whoa, okay. I'm going to dial that one back a little bit here and defend my Golden Bears.
All right.
That spread is sitting, last I checked, Auburn minus 11.5.
Yeah,
I believe
13.5. Maybe.
I believe it is the number. Well, we can double check that really quickly because the internet is just a wonderful, glorious tool in which everything is available readily and quickly. 13.5.
Yeah.
That's a sizable number. I think Auburn is capable of covering that. 45-7. I'm not going to go into that particular camp. I think Cal, like I said, they just have that tendency to
Yeah.
play up and down to the level of their competition. I think you could see a backdoor cover here. I think Auburn establishes control early and Cal kind of hangs around, but is never really, truly threatening or having a drive to take the lead later, anything like that. I'll go Auburn 31, Cal 20 in this game.
Oh, okay. All right. I think allowing 20 points to this Cal team would actually be pretty disappointing for this Auburn defense. Last year, they held 6 opponents to 14 points or less, to include Cal. So in Jordan-Hare, maybe they pose a little bit more of a problem. We do have a double agent in Sam Jackson, who has fed some information.
The new Connor Stallions. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I don't. I'm not sure that he had any useful information there on how Cal's going to play Auburn. But you have given us lots of useful information here. I want to thank you for joining me. Before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you, Spencer.
I'm on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, hosting Locked On College Football and Locked On Oregon Ducks. If you care to know about one of the newest Big Ten teams, that's right, Oregon is in the Big Ten because that's the world of college football that we have.
It is.
I am on Twitter as well, at Mclaughlin CFB is the handle. If you'd like to tell me I'm so utterly ridiculous to think that Cal could cover 13.5 points on the road after losing by 4 points last year, then by all means, you may do so. Although many Auburn fans out there probably have my Twitter saved based on the frequency with which they entered the mentions last year. So I don't think they'll have any trouble finding me, but I'll remind you or let anybody who is new to the channel know where you may find my handle. You're welcome to comment anytime.
Guys, that's it for another great edition of the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. If you want more content like this, please hit like and subscribe. We are the War Report on every social media platform. TW Report on TikTok. We'll be back at you tomorrow with even more Auburn Express content. We're signing off, but as always, War Eagle.